Hi everyone, this is Sean Ismail from the Cloud Ranger, and you are viewing the Microsoft Azure training. Today is the part 6 of the Azure Virtual Networks session, and we are going to discuss about point-to-site VPN. Actually, we're not going to discuss, but we are going to go more hands-on on creating a point-to-site VPN. In the previous session, we have actually discussed the concepts that go behind it. So this is going to be more of a hands-on session than anything else. This is how a point-to-site VPN looks like, as we discussed before. So you have multiple points that connects to a single site. And in our case, the single site is an Azure Virtual Network. So you have multiple clients, which are users who might be in a branch office or who might be in a coffee shop or at their home on a laptop or a desktop or even their handheld devices. And what they do is they create a secure tunnel to the virtual network directly. So it seems that as if they're in the virtual network, which is the basic premises of a virtual private network or a VPN anyways, but that's what we are going to try to establish. So some details about the VPN before we get started is that you will need an individual client machine that will connect to the Azure Virtual Network with a traditional VPN client. So these will be multiple clients, so it could be a desktop or a laptop, and you'll install a piece of software on there, and that will connect or establish the virtual private network or the VPN. You might already be used to something like this from your organization if they provide you with a VPN client, something like a Cisco AnyConnect or an IPsec client, where you put in your server name, your username or certificate, and you connect to your work or your data center, and you establish the secret channel or tunnel. It uses the SSTP, so it's a secure socket tunnel protocol that's used by this VPN tunnel. The authentication is actually done by user certificate, and we'll go into details on this when we go hands-on. You'll be creating certificates, self-signed certificates to make this happen. They're individually configured, so if you have like 10 client computers, you will be configuring this 10 times, and you'll be installing that software 10 times on all of these client computers. Currently, for now, there are 128 clients that can be there per virtual network that you create on your Azure. So if you need more than that for whatever reason, you'll obviously have to do on a separate virtual network. So you'll have to create a separate VNet and do all of that. It requires a dynamically routed gateway. So we discussed this before. The two types of gateways that you can make in Microsoft Azure, and the one the point-to-site VPN uses is a dynamically routed gateway. There is a limitation on the bandwidth. So the gateway bandwidth it's 80 megabits per second. So if you have a lot of users and who will require significant amount of bandwidth, then 80 megabits per second might not be enough for you. So you might have to create a separate virtual network with its own gateway. So when we keep saying gateway over here, that's actually your edge device. So in your traditional on-premises, this might be a like a Cisco device or any device which will be able to create a VPN tunnel. So in Azure, this is just a gateway that's actually created for you. In the back end, what will happen is that it spins up a couple of roles that is completely transparent to you, so you don't have to worry about it, and Azure takes care of that. So these are the sequence of steps that we'll create or we'll use to establish the point-to-site VPN. So the first one is that we'll create the virtual network with the point-to-site connectivity enabled from the management portal. Second one is once the virtual network is created, we'll actually create the gateway from the management portal. I'll show you the PowerShell command for it as well, but we'll be doing this from the management portal. Then step 3 and 4 is related to the certificate. So we'll actually create a root certificate, and we will generate a self-signed client certificate from that root certificate. And step 5 is that we'll export the client certificate from the certificate store. And this is the certificate that you'll be distributing to the client computers. So each time you have to provide one of the certificates to one of the client computers, you have to generate one. Then we are going to upload the root authentication certificate to Azure. So the root certificate that we created in step 3, we are going to upload this to Azure through the management portal. And I have not found a PowerShell way to upload this so far. So I think the only way you can upload this is from the management portal. And step 7 is going actually to the client machine and importing that client certificate to authenticate to the virtual network. And step 8 is installing a client VPN package. We'll be downloading this client VPN package once we have completed step 3 and the package is created for us, and we'll download it from the Azure portal as well. And of course, the step 9 is to just establish the VPN and verify connectivity. And the way we are going to do that is we are going to create a virtual machine using the virtual network that's created on step 1. And if everything works out fine, we should be able to connect this internally with the DIP or the internal IP address from our local machine. Okay, so the next two things I want to talk about here is the Makecert utility. It's an utility that you have that you can download from Microsoft site, or it comes with the free version of Visual Studio. You might already have that on your computer, so I'll show you a nice trick to see if you already have it. If you don't, I am going to put a zip file on the blog site where you can go and download this Makecert utility if you don't have one. And basically the command here shows, I'm not going to get into so much details, by the way, with the switches over here, but what this does is that the Makecert utility is creating a root certificate with Ranger P2S root as the name, and the second one, what it's doing is it's taking this Ranger P2S root certificate and creating a client certificate and saving that. So if you really want to know the details, and you really should at least once look into the details of what this command actually does, you can go to this excellent article on the Gateway website. It shows how to create self-signed certificates with the Makecert for development, and it's a lot into it goes a lot into detail, so you might not want all the details, but it's definitely a good read to at least get some idea as far as reference is concerned on what the switches do. And it's very well written, so if you want, you can go through the whole article and try things yourself as well. I think it's one of the best articles written there for the Makecert utility. Anyway, so that's all we have for slides today. What we are going to do is deep dive into my client computer and connect to our subscription and get started on creating a point-to-site VPN. All right, so what I've done is I've connected to my client computer here, and there's nothing right now under all items, so it's a very clean slate over here. So what I've done is gone and pasted all the steps that we need for creating a point-to-site VPN in this notepad, so we can go through each step and check off each of them as we complete them, and this way we won't forget any steps. So the first thing is creating a virtual network with point-to-site connectivity enabled from management portal. So we know how to create a virtual network, and this is no different from what we have been doing in the past few sessions, and you should be really comfortable with this by now, is that you can create a virtual network here, or click on the new over here and creating a virtual network. I'm going to name mine one as RangerNet. My location is East US 2. Go ahead and put the location you are in. And in this screen, the DNS server and VPN connectivity, we have been ignoring this screen so far, but what we are going to do here is this time click on configure a point-to-site VPN. And as you can see, as soon as you click on that, it actually adds this interesting diagram over here, which shows that you have a bunch of clients who are going to create a tunnel to get into the RangerNet virtual network. The other thing I want to show over here is that when you have a virtual network, you can have multiple point-to-site as well as a site-to-site. So if you actually clicked with this, you'll see the duality here, that it will actually give you a new local network. And by local network in Azure, it means your on-premise network, or the local on-premise network. So what this means is that you can have multiple clients who can come outside and establish their own tunnels, as well as you can have a site-to-site tunnel from your data center or your office network directly to the RangerNet. And this both are supported in a single scenario here as well. But for now, we are not going to do a site-to-site. We are going to just do a point-to-site. Okay, so let's click on next. Here, this is the interesting part. We have not seen this screen before. Well, we have seen something similar, but not exactly this one. So what we are doing here is providing the information on the IP range that will be provided out to your clients. What does that mean? So every time one of your clients actually try to connect or connects to your virtual network, you will be providing them a VPN IP address. And this IP address is something that's going to be separate from your on-premises or your client's computer. So you have to make sure that these addresses don't overlap with any existing range. So we will do some checks later on to actually demonstrate on what happened here. But you can see that it is sort of limited on the number of addresses it can give out. So if you do a /29, you can see it will give you 6 addresses, 14 addresses, 30, 62, and you'll probably never need 254 because chances are if you have your entire or all the clients that can connect to your virtual network, you won't have more than 128 if you remember from our slides that you can only have 128 clients per VNet. So anyways, so what are we going to do is we're going to just keep it on 6. So we are going to assume there's not going to be more than 6 clients. And I'm going to keep this default. So it's going to be a /29. So this is only for the point-to-site connectivity. It has nothing to do with actual address space of the virtual network yet. So we are going to do that over here. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a different scheme for my virtual network, so that way it's easy for me to remember. I'm going to go to 10.1.0.0, and I'm going to go with a 16 over here as usual. I'm going to leave this as it is, 10.1.0.0. So it's not a 16, sorry. That was not the 16 I wanted. That's the 16 I wanted, /16, okay? And now you can see obviously that number of IP addresses that you can actually have. 10.1.0.0, I think that's good enough. I'm going to just leave it default here. So now the next thing I'm going to do here, and which we have not done before, is that once we have figured out this IP addresses, you need to also ensure that since you're going to create a tunnel, that you have not overlapped these addresses with your on-premise or your client computer or whatever. So you have to remember that and put something unique there. So there is some planning you want to do before you put these IP addresses here. Okay, but the next thing I'm going to do is actually click on Add Gateway Subnet. So you have a subnet 1, that this is what it's going to be, the range, 10.1.0.0 to 10.1.31.255, so which is almost like 8,192 IP addresses or clients that you can have over here. So creating a gateway subnet is just like creating another subnet, but it's actually created for you. And what it'll do is that it will take a couple of IP addresses from here. So the gateway will be communicating with this, and that's the internal IP address. You don't have to do a whole lot of configuration over here because it's all done in the backend for you, but you have to make sure that you add that subnet that's going to be dedicated for the gateway. And this is obviously in the same range or the address space your entire address space is, but it's definitely different from the subnet you have over here, because the gateway in the backend wants to make sure that nothing conflicts with these addresses. So those are the two things you have to remember. The first one is that you want to make sure that you actually have the point-to-site connectivity address space defined here. And the second thing over here you have to remember is that once everything is done, you actually add the gateway, and it will add the gateway for you once you create the address space. Okay, so now that we have done everything over here, let's go ahead and create OK. And we'll let this virtual network create. It doesn't take more than a minute. Okay, so our virtual network is created. So let's go ahead and create a virtual machine which is going to use this RangerNet virtual network. So this is just something we are going to create so it's easy for us to test out if we are doing this right. So I'm not going to do a whole lot over here. I'm going to do a from gallery, a custom virtual machine. And we have done this plenty of times. So this is going to be just something that I'm going to breeze through. I'm going to call this a C-Ranger VM100. It's going to be a standard. I'm going to do something like an A3 with 7 gigs of memory. Put in the username and the password. Click on next. I'll leave this cloud service and everything as is, except that over here on the virtual networks, I want to make sure that it's going to use the RangerNet. As you can see, it picked up the subnet. Everything else is going to be default here. So we are not going to do anything differently. Click on next and click OK. And we are going to let this virtual machine create over here. So what we have done over here is so far done with this step. We create the virtual network. So the next one, what we are going to do is create a network gateway from the management portal. So let's go ahead and do that. So we go to the networks here, and we are going to go into the virtual network. And in configure, we can see on the tab over here is that you can see all the details of everything you have here. So we would go back to the dashboard, and you can see that it created this little image over here. It says the gateway was not created. So your clients, this is actually a visual diagram with the broken, with the tunnel broken over here. It shows that there's no connectivity. Obviously, the gateway is not created. So what we are going to do is create gateway. Click on create gateway. I'm sorry. So it says that do you want to create the gateway for the virtual network RangerNet, and we're going to click on yes. So this gateway, and this is where it gets a little interesting, is that this gateway could take up to an hour to create, unfortunately, if you're unlucky. It runs for a long time because there's a lot going on in the back end. It's creating web roles, it's creating endpoints, it's assigning public IP address to the gateway. It takes a lot of time. I have seen this take as low as 10 minutes, but never less than that, and go up to 40 minutes, 50 minutes, even an hour to create in the backend. So this is the time you probably want to go and do something else. So I'm going to pause the video, obviously, and make this go like in a super speed for you. But do not be alarmed if you clicked on create a gateway and you just keep seeing it going and wondering if it's working in the backend or not, because it is actually working, and it will be over in if nothing, at least 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And if you're lucky, then maybe 10 minutes. So I'm going to pause the video here, and we'll come back once the gateway has been created. All right, so it wasn't really that bad. It took about 20 minutes, but you can see the gateway was created. So if we go back to the dashboard here, the message is gone. Now there's a delete gateway option here because obviously the gateway was created. And you can see the gateway has been given a public IP address, which makes sense, right? So your users or clients would be actually putting in this IP address to connect. And that's how basic VPN is. So this time the error message over here changed because it's saying the root certificate has not been uploaded. So we discussed this briefly before, saying that there is a root certificate that we'll be generating and uploading here, which is going to be what the client certificates are going to authenticate against. Okay, so let's leave it here and see what we have finished. We have finished this step as well. So let's go ahead and jump right in creating the root certificate. Oh, by the way, we will be showing you how to create this gateway with a PowerShell command. I'm just going to try to remember that. But let's go ahead and create the root certificate. So in my temp folder, I have actually extracted the utility makecert.exe. The best way to find out if you already have the utility or not is just go to the root and just do dir/s makecert.exe. So this will actually search through and find out if you already have the utility or not. If you don't, download it from the blog website, and I'll have that in a zip format for you to download and extract and put somewhere. Anyways, so we are here at the temp folder. This is where I'm going to create the self-signed root certificate first. Create the self-signed root certificate. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in the command we have seen before. It was makecert and sky exchange -r-n. We'll put a common name here, and this is going to be the root certificate name. So for me, it's going to be Ranger P2S root, just so it's easy to remember. And I'm going to put this on an encryption algorithm. Put a length on this, 2048. And I'm going to store this in and I'm going to name this as Ranger P2S root dot certificate. So a couple of things before I go ahead and press enter on this one. I'm going to show you in my temp folder. I just have make cert here. There's one more thing I'm going to do over here. Go to MMC real quick, and I'm going to go ahead add remove snap-in for certificates. So this is how you're going to see what certificate comes in. It's going to be my user account and finish. Okay, so let's do this. Expand this. There's no root authority. These are all the certification authorities that I have here. And in my personal, there's really nothing going on here. Anyway, so let's go ahead and fire up this command. Succeeded. If you go to temp, you should see a root certificate that was created. This is the root certificate that we are going to upload to Azure later on. And that's all really. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a couple of other things. Let's go ahead and check off this guy. We are going to now create a self-signed client certificate from the root certificate. Okay, so let's actually go to the certificates here and do a refresh. I should see the root certificate here. Yeah, the root certificate is here. So let's go ahead and create the self-signed client certificate from the root certificate, and the command for that one is make cert. So we have created the root certificate, and we're going to make a client certificate out of this. And you will have to do this for each of your clients that are going to get this. So it's going to be a similar command. Name it something that I know is for client. So I'll just call it Ranger P2S client. Okay. And once again, if you want to know what the switches really do, please go ahead and visit that article I mentioned earlier in the slides. So now I'm going to go specify the root certificate we have, which is P2S root. Okay. I think so far so good. What did I mess up here? Too many parameters. I might have done something twice. So let's see. Alrighty, so fixed there. So there was a dash missing over here with the IS. Some of you might have already noticed. But yeah, took a while to figure out that. Create self-signed cert from root certificate. So that is done. So if we come over here and do a refresh, you should see the client certificate show up here as well. Okay, so the next one would be to export the client certificate from the certificate store. So how do we do that? Let's come over here to export the certificate. What we are going to do is come over here, right click on the P2S client, and we are going to go to all tasks and export. So now it says that welcome to the certificate export wizard. So we are going to export the client certificate. So let's click on next. We want to export the private key. So you want to check that. It's not checked by default. And we're going to check the defaults here. There is going to be a password that we need to put here. So go ahead and put a password that you can remember. This is really easy. Go on next. And we are going to store it. Let's put it in the temp folder as well. So I'll just call it the client cert, and it's going to export it as a .pfx. Click next, finish, export was successful, and we have put this in temp. So this was the root certificate, and this is the PFX of the client certificate with the private key. So I think we have done that as well. So check this out. So let's go ahead and upload the root authentication certificate to Azure, which is the root certificate. And the way you do that, and I couldn't find a PowerShell, so the only way you can actually do this is from the management portal anyway. So if we are here at networks, go to your virtual network here, the VNet, and go to certificates. And it says a point-to-site VPN has been configured, but is missing a root certificate. This is the similar error we are seeing at the dashboard here, if you look at the diagram. And it's going to throw that error till you actually go ahead and upload it. So let's go ahead and upload a root certificate. It's very simple. It's just a browser. So we're going to go to this PC, go to C drive, go to temp, and go to pick the root certificate. Press open here and click on this, and it's uploading the root certificate. That's the thumbprint. It's expiring a ridiculously amount 2039 just because it's self-signed. And we're going to just wait for this to upload. It takes like a few seconds, really. Okay, the root certificate has been uploaded. So click on OK here, come over here, and we are done. Now we have to install the client certificate on the client machine. So what we have to do is that since we have exported that, we now have to re-import it. And basically not re-import it, but any client computer who's going to have it, you're going to provide them this certificate and they are going to install it. So it might be looking a little odd when we are reinstalling this certificate or installing this certificate because we generated it ourselves and exported it. But I just want to show you this how it will be done. So you come over here to the temp folder, and all we are going to do is double click on the PFX, and it's saying that certificate import wizard. So anytime you double click on that, it will be importing it. So what we did was export before, that's import. So we are going to keep the current user, and that's the location. Now it's going to ask for the key that we had set earlier. So it's something very important that you have to remember. So I'm going to just put in the password and make sure everything else is default. Click on next. Let this one automatically select the certificate store. I'm going to keep that default, click next and finish. And it's going to tell you that you're about to install a certificate. And you're going to import this to be the root from, the certificate was generated from this root, and if you're going to trust it, you're going to actually install it. We are going to say, yeah, that's fine. So let's do yes. It says the import was successful. Click OK. And we go ahead and get into the MMC console. Let's go ahead and refresh that. Let's go ahead and refresh this as well. And refreshing, we should see the root certificate here. I think everything is in place. Anyways, so that's done. So we have installed the client certificate on the client machine, which is okay. Now the next step and the final step left is to actually install the VPN package. So the way you do that is go to your VNet here. Check something really quick. You can see that error is gone. It just says client 0 because nobody's connected, obviously. So it says client 0. And looks like everything is set in order here. So here in the network, in the dashboard, you'll see in your virtual network is that download the 64-bit client VPN package at 32. So depending on the client computer you are on or your user is going to be on, you're going to download this package. And this package is going to have all information for the VPN client. So it takes a couple of seconds for this to actually download the package. And it's going to show up as a download. Perfect. It's got a weird name. It just tries to keep it unique. So obviously you can change that to whatever you want. Go to a save as, go to desktop. I'm going to save this client on my desktop. Okay, close this here, go over here, here on the desktop. Now to do a couple of things. The first thing you want to do this, since this came from an outside, so go to properties. You want to make sure that this came from another computer, so you want to unblock that. Click on apply. I'm actually on Windows 8.1 Pro. Depending on your installation, things might show differently. So I'm going to run this install as an administrator. For whatever reason, and I noticed this while I was going through this demonstration a few times to make sure everything was okay. I've noticed at one point when I installed this a couple of times, obviously different time it was a different package because based on your gateway information and everything, it actually generates a specific package for your virtual network. So you are going to only do this step of downloading this after all the steps have been completed to ensure that all the information that you have over here is actually stored in your client VPN package. So anyways, I was doing this multiple times, and at one time when I came over here, when I was installing this and clicking yes, nothing was happening, and I was going crazy. What happened? I found out that it actually goes to app data and installs there. So what you're going to do is you're going to come to this location based on your users. For me, it's Sean and app data. Go to roaming, go to Microsoft, go to network, and go to connections, and there's going to be CM. So this is the path you're going to go to. So once this is installed the very first time, it actually puts a bunch of files there. As long as before installing, this folder is all clean and there's nothing there, there should not be any problem with the install. In general, there should not be any problem with the install. But I noticed that a couple of times after I installed this few times, things were getting wacky and the client was not installing. But okay, we're not going to have a problem with that. Let's click on yes. It will actually install really, really quick. And as you can see over here in my Windows 8.1, it actually created the VPN connection over here. A couple of things happened as well. So if you go to CM, you should see there are a couple of entries in that folder. So these were the folders I was talking about, or the file and folders. So the next time you're trying to install this for a new practice, make sure you delete this so there's not going to be any installer problems. The other thing I want to show over here as well is that it's going to create that adapter called RangerNet, and it does everything for you. So okay, that's all the information really you need to set up point-to-site. Let's see if we have everything over here. So that's the last step we have completed, is downloaded and installed. Let's go ahead and establish the VPN and verify the connectivity. So in 8.1, how we do it is click on this and click on connect. What it'll do is it fire up this RangerNet VPN custom client that it has done for you. And as you notice in properties, there's not a whole lot of information over here because this is a certificate-based authentication, so it knows where to go and get all your information and all the credentials and all the server or the gateway IP address and everything. So you don't have to do a whole lot of things. So let's go ahead and click on connect. Okay, it's saying that it needs an elevated privilege. We ask it to continue, and that's it. You are connected to the RangerNet VNet. So how are we going to verify this? So the way we are going to verify this is few ways, right? So the first thing is, let's go over here. We are in the RangerNet VNet. So let's go in the RangerNet VNet. So let's go back and let this refresh. And what we are going to do is we are going to go to configure. And we are going to see that we should have got a range from 10,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the command prompt and actually do an IP config and see the IP address the VPN actually gave me. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to clear the screen. Oops, clear the screen. Actually, even go to the root, clear the screen. And let's go ahead and do the IP config. So once I do the IP config, I can see all my interfaces and everything here. But what I'm interested in is actually the PPP adapter RangerNet. So this is the connectivity for the tunnel. And I can see that I got an address 10.0.0.0.2. So this is the tunnel's endpoint address on my client computer. And it took it from this address space. So the more clients you have, they'll probably get 10.0.0.3, 10.0.0.4, 5. With our address space and the subnet here, you can probably give up to 6 clients. So this is the IP address. We know that we have got this IP address here, which is okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is actually try to do something with this tunnel. So to ensure that we actually do have a VPN connectivity. So let's go on the virtual machines here. I created a virtual machine, and this virtual machine has let's actually go RDP into it first, because there are a couple of things I want to do on the virtual machine before we actually go and test the connectivity of the VPN out. Let's go ahead and click on connect and open up the RDP. This is the password we need to put that we had put in when we were building the VPN. Click on yes. Let the virtual machine load. Uh, the first thing I want to do, since I'm going to do a test of the tunnel with a ping, what I'm going to do is first disable the firewall. And obviously should not be doing this on a production environment, but I'm just doing this to prove the concept. So I'm going to turn the firewall off. Let's connect this off. Let's fire up the command over here real quick as well. And what we are going to notice is the DIP, dynamic IP, or the internal IP. So I'm going to do an IP config here. So I know that I'm at the IP, the internal IP 10.104. So everything we know about networks so far, we know that an outside public computer, there's no way should be able to ping this address or even know that this IP address exists to this virtual machine. But that's the whole purpose of a VPN. It will directly put us on the virtual network, and we should be able to get to this VM from our client computer, which obviously is not in the virtual network. But just because we are connected with the VPN, we should be able to do this. So the way we'll do this is we are going to ping the DIP, right? So the DIP was 10.1.0.4. If the VPN tunnel is up and running, this is the internal IP address, 10.1.0.4 of the virtual machine. We should be able to ping this. So let's see. All right, so we can ping this. So this actually shows that we are directly now tunneled to the virtual network. And anything we can do with this virtual network right now we should be able to do this locally. So instead of using this RDP client, if we go and get a remote client, sorry, let's do this. We already have one opened. So let's do this. Let's do a 10.1.0.4. So we don't have to put any ports. We don't have to do anything. We should be able to directly go to this virtual machine with that IP address because we are connected to this virtual network with the tunnel. So let's go ahead and put my username, 10.1.0.4. And this is my client computer, right? I mean, this is a public computer for, I'm at home right now, not even on the cloud. Obviously, you cannot be in the cloud, but let's see if this connects. Okay, so it's asking for the password. So this is a good sign that it's connected. And as you can see, using 10.1.0.4, the internal address, we are here on this virtual machine. So I want to review a couple of things before we actually end this session here, because I want to go over the address spacing. I just want to make sure that you're absolutely clear what happened here. So when we go to the RangerNet, there were two address spaces under configure. So also, since we are already here, you can actually see the number of clients connected is 1, and you can see this tunnel has been established because I am now connected to RangerNet. So I am that client. If you have more clients, they all will show up here. And this is the gateway IP address. A little bit of ping and stuff we did here and there. You can see the data in and out. Anyway, so let's go over the configure here. And the point-to-site connectivity, this is the address space that a VPN gives you. So let's do an IP config once again to go over this. I know I'm repeating myself here, but this is very important. So this is the IP address you get once you have connected to the VPN. So this is your side of the tunnel. So technically, if you are on the server and you do a ping 10.0. If I can remember, 10.0.0.2, you should be able to go and ping my client computer at home because they're on the VPN. And I guess the only reason this is not working right now because I probably have a firewall set up over here, which I need to turn off. So just for the sake of clarity, let's go ahead and turn off that firewall. So this was my client computer. The firewall is off now. So let's go to the virtual machine here. Let's try this once again. Okay, so as you can see, it obviously can reach my client computer from the cloud as well. So this IP address was my endpoint to for the tunnel. And this is the IP range that will actually establish that. Now, the IP range below there, and this is the IP range we are aware of, is the virtual network's IP address. And we know that this starts from 10.1.0.0 because as you can see on the virtual machine 10.104 is the DIP, or this is the internal IP address. So that's no different. So it took it from this range, the subnet one. And the gateway is on this range. If this is for internal to Azure. They are going to do their thing in the backend. You don't have to do anything besides creating this gateway. All you have to remember is that it went and created the gateway, and the gateway's uh, public IP address is this. And this public address is for the gateway. It has nothing to do with the cloud service and all those VIPs and stuff we have talked about, because you are now connecting completely in a different way to the gateway and not the cloud service directly. So you can see these all are different things. Okay, so the last thing I want to also mention is that this is cloud, and this is the billing model that anytime you use something, you are going to get charged for it. So you want to absolutely make sure that you have everything turned off. And for example, if I click on yes right now, I'm going to turn off the virtual machine. The only thing I have seen is that when you have this up and running and you have a gateway, your gateway is actually built. So having this gateway over here, even if you're not doing anything, your virtual machine is turned off, nothing is happening on the network, obviously your VPN is disconnected, nothing is going on, you are still going to be charged for this gateway because this gateway is up and running, it's holding a public IP address, means it's holding a resource, and Azure is going to bill you for it. Um, there are many things I do to keep my costs low and to make your trial period as effective as possible. You probably should turn off everything and possibly delete everything. And this is what I do. That's why every time you get into one of my sessions, you go up over here and you go to all items. You'll see I have usually nothing over here because I turn everything off and delete everything after I'm done with the session or my lab to ensure that I'm not billed for it. So you have to remember that with the gateway, there's no way to turn off that gateway. At least I have not found a way to turn off the gateway. Um, and I know for a fact that it doesn't exist until the gateway is up and running, you're going to get billed for it. So unfortunately, the way to stop getting billed for this is deleting the gateway. So this will ensure that there's no resources held by your subscription and you're not billed for it. This is important if you are doing a lab or you have an environment in production, which is not really something that's up and running 24/7, 365. So you want to make sure that you account for this, that there will be a few dollars. It's not really a whole lot. It's a few dollars that will be charged to your subscription. And it could go up to $20, $30 per month for just keeping this gateway up and running. This is regardless of data in and data out, right? So please remember that. And as you can see, since I disconnected here, it took some time to refresh, but it disconnected here. There's one last thing I did promise that I was going to do before was that I was going to talk about creating the gateway with a script. And the way you do that is create the commandlet is new Azure VNet gateway, and you give the VNet name because you only can create a gateway in a VNet, right? So our name was RangerNet for the VNet, and all you have to do is specify the gateway type. And if you remember, our gateway has to be a dynamic routing. So that's all you have to do to create this gateway over here. We did it from the portals. We went and just clicked on create gateway or add gateway. And right now it's obviously not letting us do that because this is how you have to delete it. So this is how you would have done the gateway from here. There's one last thing for the exam purposes I want to also mention is if you come over here, configure, should not in configure, let's go back to the RangerNet over here. This is your virtual network, RangerNet. If you export the file, if you remember, we talked about that XML file earlier in the session where you can actually save that and you can look at all the configurations. And this is very important for the exam because we went through a very small config file when we first started off, but I want to show you the different things that are there right now. So as you can see, that couple of things got added here. There was a gateway subnet that was added here for your subscription. So the subnet name, so it was just basically another single subnet for your RangerNet. So that's all the information you have here. And you have to remember that when you create things in your VNet, they actually get added to this file. And this is one way to export it, and it's easy to import it if you are going to work on it as a backup for your network configuration files. Anyway, so that concludes our session for point-to-site VPN. Let's go back to our slides. Now, if you remember that this is how we created the self-signed root certificate and self-signed client certificate from the root certificate, please go to this website and get the reference on the switches, because I hate the fact that we do something and you do not know what you are doing, because when you are doing this in production, obviously every single switch over here will matter to you. So it's definitely worthwhile understanding what it does. Okay, so that concludes our session. And as usual, our training site is at cloudranger.net/Azure-training. Our YouTube channel is at Cloud Ranger Network. Twitter is at Cloud Ranger Blog. And you can email me at sean@cloudranger.net. Feel free to put comments on the YouTube videos or ask any questions. Recently, someone actually put a comment and had a query. This is something obviously I can discuss because this was a comment right on the YouTube channel. Usually the emails that I get directly are the ones I do not try to respond on the video for everyone, because those are I'm assuming the user wanted that message to be private and did not want to post it on the YouTube channel. But my suggestion is always put a comment on the YouTube video so everyone can be benefited from the answer to the question you may have, right? So recently one question came up was that if I was going to cover Azure websites and Azure storage and things like that. To answer that question is absolutely. I'm going through the course curriculum that is provided by Microsoft on the website, and I did throw up a link before to that where you can actually go and see all the different topics Microsoft wants you to go to learn the 7533 to attempt that exam. I'm going to go through all of that. I'm going to go through Azure websites. I'm going to go through Azure storage, virtual machines, everything that's there. So by looking at these videos, you should be able to go and attempt, of course, with further study, you should be able to go and attempt for your exam. The reason I'm following this sequence is because I feel that this is how I learned the best. And I came from a background where I was already working on infrastructure. Cloud is not something you can jump into if you do not have some experience with infrastructure in general. So I felt that this is the best sequence. Now, I've gone through the Microsoft official curriculum MOC, and what I found out that Microsoft themselves and a lot of vendors and trainers, they're going through their own sequence. So somebody started with Azure websites, someone started with what a virtual machine is and start from there. Heck, I even saw someone just started with the networking first. So I feel that this is the best sequence for us, and I'm going to follow the sequence I have. And obviously, if you are just viewing this in 2015, that's what it's right now. I'm actually building the videos as I'm publishing this. So it takes few days, at least 3 days. I try to at least keep it 3 days before I publish a new session. So you have to have a little patience till I actually get there. And if you are viewing this later, you probably are not going to have this issue. All the videos will probably be done by now, so you can probably jump into one session whichever interests you, like for example Azure storage, and you might be able to view that. But having said that, these videos are following a sequence, which also means that they are not exactly always self-contained. So in some of these videos, I do assume that you have watched the previous video or watched one of the previous concepts and hands-on to go and view the session you are viewing. For example, the session today on point-to-site VPN, I did not get into too much concepts because I'm assuming you have watched Azure Virtual Networks Part 5, which actually explained everything. So if you are just going and viewing this video by itself, if you're just looking for the steps, you're perfectly fine. But if you're looking for some concepts and some context to get onto it, it might not be as easy. So anyways, feel free to actually go through the entire course that are available right now, and they're going to come, and you will be okay with the 7533. Of course, I cannot provide you the guarantee on if I'm going to cover every single thing that's going to be on a 7533 exam. That's almost breaking the NDA, and that's something even I can't predict, or anybody can't predict. Even Microsoft trainers who are training you professionally won't be able to predict what's going to be on your exam. But this will give you a very good head start. And MSDN Azure, that's where you need to go and read about everything. It's a lot more in details. It's a little bit, it's more of a manual than a training. Even though MSDN has become better over the years, I've seen. But yeah, it's a lot of information to absorb from there, but that's your ultimate guide if you want to go and read up on something. So yeah, so have no worries. We'll have all the videos here for you, and it's just there's just so much that happens in a day for me. It takes some time to actually prepare, and before all these demos and everything, I actually make sure that I do this a few times myself to ensure I'm giving you the most accurate information. And I actually also go through a review process where I make sure that everything that I have said is actually as accurate as possible. Um, so yeah. Anyways, thank you for viewing, and I'll be seeing you in the next session. And bye till then.